Hi. What's up, guys? Fooch from Fooch TV here. Long time no see. I recently came back to Korea from a 3-week vacation from my home state, California. And although it is very nice to go visit, I try to visit there about once a year in order to refresh. There are minor things that, do annoy me about Korea. So I like to refresh after about a year. However, because of COVID, it took about 2 years to get back. And although I did enjoy my time there and I am feeling refreshed, I am so happy to be back here in Korea. Now, although it's nice to go visit in order to see family, friends, and do a couple of things that I can't do in Korea, two things that I noticed that kind of blew my mind was how bad the crime had gotten in California and the current COVID situation, how people are dealing with that. Now, if you know anything about Korea, or you've lived in Korea, or you've spoken to people who've lived in Korea, or you've seen people who make videos about their top list of reasons why they like Korea, safety is always usually coming up. Korea is ultra safe. You can walk around at any time during the day and night for that matter and be completely safe. Women as well. There is a bit more danger, especially at night, for women. However, compared to the US, it's absolutely nothing. Now, the US has always been a dangerous country, at least in, many parts, especially big cities. However, going back this time, it felt especially dangerous. Now, Los Angeles and San Francisco were already quite dangerous. However, they seemed even more dangerous now because of the economic situation for many people becoming worse as a result of COVID. Certain laws being imposed in California that makes it easier for criminals to get back on the street easier, especially if they commit a non-violent crime, and people from radical groups partaking in what the news likes to call mostly peaceful protests. If you're interested in any of those details of what I've just specifically mentioned, you can go ahead and do your own research. I just want to talk about the stories and what I've experienced firsthand. Now, although this took place a couple of months ago, I was in the area, which isn't even that dangerous of a neighborhood, where people who were sitting at a cafe or a restaurant during the day, this is during the day, middle of the day, two people walked up with a gun and stole the things that they just purchased and their personal belongings that they had beforehand. While I was in San Francisco, a group of burglars got together and smashed the window of a Louis Vuitton store and stole as many items as they could before the police came. That wasn't a one-off incident, as I heard reports of those types of crimes were happening all along the coastline of California for the past couple of months. And on the first night I was in LA, a group of burglars smashed their windows at a department store called Nordstrom's, which is at a decent mall, The Grove, pretty good mall, and ran off with a whole bunch of stuff, not even that late into the night, about 9 or 10 p.m. Additionally, there were many reports of follow-home robberies where if you're out driving a nice car or wearing a nice watch, maybe a Rolex, people will spot you and follow you home and rob you the second you get home. I think I saw a news report when I was in LA of somebody being followed home from the club and having their $20,000 Rolex stolen. Another incident that happened is I think someone was followed, driving a Mercedes, and there was a boyfriend and girlfriend, and the boyfriend was shot and killed in front of the girlfriend in an attempted robbery. And I heard that people are using those Apple tracking tags, kind of like, the iWatches can track where your phone is. Apple released these little tags you could put on your items in order for you to locate them easier. I heard people are using those same tags to put on nice cars, tracking where they go, and then going to that person's home and robbing them. These are things that would never happen in Korea in a million years, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be back here. Furthermore, a personal experience, although I can't be certain, I'm almost 100% certain that while I was out with a couple of friends in San Francisco, that we did have our drinks spiked. No, we were kind of heavy drinking. However, I have, over 10 years of experience of drinking, sometimes way too much, and I know how my body behaves, and I know what I personally do. What I did, I've never done before in my life. All three of us drinking, we all blacked out. I ended up walking around the streets of San Francisco trying to find my friend's apartment for about 2 hours after looking back at the iWatch data, walking about 9 kilometers. Luckily, I had nothing stolen from me, or worse off, a serious injury or being killed. Walking the streets of San Francisco at night can be extremely dangerous. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing it. Luckily, nothing happened, and after 2 hours, I was able to make it to a hotel where I called a taxi and was able to get home. The reason why I just didn't call an Uber is I did not have the SIM card set up yet, so fortunately I was able to make it home, mostly safe and sound. The next day my foot was in a lot of pain. I thought it was just because I was walking a lot with a shoe that didn't have good ankle support. However, later that evening, after some sightseeing, when I took off my shoe, I noticed that my entire foot was black and blue and swollen. It took about a couple of weeks for the bruising to go away, and still part of the foot hurts. I'm waiting because, the US has terrible health insurance. I wasn't able to do anything over there. Even though I did buy traveler's insurance, I didn't want to, go get an x-ray and then, possibly get, if worst case scenario, get a cast or something, only to find out that the insurance wouldn't cover it. So I just waited till I came back to Korea, and I'm currently in quarantine right now for another 6 days. So after my quarantine time is finished, I'm gonna finally go to a doctor and get an x-ray to see if my foot is okay. Unfortunately, one of my friends did not have it as easy as I did. He also blacked out in an attempt to go home while he was on the street. I guess he called multiple Ubers, but he wasn't able to find the driver. He actually got mugged in the street. Now the details are a little bit unclear because, again, he was blacked out. However, he did have his phone and watch stolen from him. There was a struggle to take his Louis Vuitton wallet. However, it ended up ripping, everything flying out, had to be thrown away, and he was able to make it home with one shoe on. Now, the reason I noted, and when he got home, they called the police and they filed a police report. Now, the reason why I mentioned the fact that he only had one shoe on is interesting because the girl who also blacked out, she also ended up at home somehow with only one shoe on. Her phone was also missing. However, fortunately, she tracked the iPhone back to somebody's house where she went and left a note, and a couple hours later, that person, whether it was the thief or someone who happened to find the phone on the street, had returned it to the police station. Now, after doing some further research, and by further research, I mean going to Yelp to check out what this place is called, which is White Rabbit, I was able to find that there have been multiple 1-star reviews saying that this place is notorious for having phones and wallets stolen. I should note that it doesn't say anything about people having their drinks spiked, but again, I've never experienced, despite being absolutely super drunk, actually going off by myself, and especially walking in the streets of an extremely dangerous city at night alone. That's something I've never done before, and therefore I believe that we did have our drinks spiked. Now, moving on to the COVID situation, it's no secret that the US has had a large number of COVID cases. Now, I should note that although I've received the vaccine, maybe I've made a video before about the amount of COVID deaths, the COVID related deaths in Korea as of October 1st being 40% attributed to actually people getting the vaccine. So I'm not one of these, COVID Nazis that say you need to wear your mask at all times and everyone must be vaccinated or else. I'm not a radical person like that. However, some things that did surprise me in California, which is quite a leftist state, so if people are doing what they're doing in California, if they were doing that, compare it, if you went to a more conservative or more right state, you can only imagine what people are doing over there. But people were not wearing their masks on the street. You don't have to wear a mask unless you actually go inside an establishment. That one kind of makes sense. COVID is very difficult to transmit from people, walking past each other on the street. So I kind of get that, it should be no problem people not wearing a mask on the street. However, that's just something that I'm not quite used to, because in Korea, even if you're walking on the street, you must wear a mask. But speaking about masks, it seemed that nobody in California, or not many people, were actually wearing KF94 or above masks. This is the typical mask that we wear in Korea, and it's the mask that actually has a filter that actually does most of the protection protection from viruses and from air pollution. It seemed that people were just wearing the cloth mask or the dental mask or whatever name, cotton mask, whatever other names they have for those things. So it didn't seem like there was a lot of protection going on. People were entering stores and not putting on masks until they were asked to put on a mask. People were entering stores with the mask on, and I was with a buddy who received a phone call and he pulled down his mask in the store to talk on the phone. It just seemed like everyone was a lot more relaxed. I went clubbing one night, and even though you needed a mask to get into the club, once we were on the dance floor, I was probably one of the only people, if not the only person in the club to wear a mask. Now, the scarier thing is if you happen to catch COVID while in the US. Now, many Americans do have some sort of health insurance, so if they did catch COVID and it was severe, they would be able to go to the hospital. However, people that do not, people visiting the US that do not have that insurance, they are in great danger of not just getting the virus or becoming sick from the virus. However, they are in great danger from the actual hospital bill if they got severely sick from catching COVID. Now, as far as quarantine places go, in Korea, and if you want to check out what actually happens when you catch COVID in Korea, I'll refer you to one of my buddies, Alex Segrist. He actually caught COVID, I think, late last year, and YouTuber, he kind of vlogged the experience of getting picked up in the ambulance, taken to the facility, and, kind of the food and how they were treating him and whatnot. So you could check those videos out somewhere up, you know what to do. Somewhere you can check out those videos up top. Now, I should note that I don't know what the current policy is for people that catch COVID in Korea right now, because the numbers are very high. So I don't know if they can provide that same service to people or only people that are, critically ill. However, this was, again, something that happened last year. But a friend of mine who is visiting Los Angeles to see the BTS concert a couple of weeks ago, she happened to go 3 nights in a row, she actually caught COVID. So she was about to board her flight back to Chile, and she had to get the PCR test, and it turns out that she tested positive. Now, she was staying at a hostel with a couple other people at the time, so she obviously couldn't stay there anymore. However, once she got tested positive, she didn't know what to do. So I went ahead and I helped her by calling the federal CDC number, who said you're going to have to call the local CDC hotline, which is 211 in Los Angeles. So I called that, and the first person I spoke to pretty much said there's nothing that she can do. She's just going to have to find a place by herself to quarantine. After doing some more hunting, because again, these numbers are not just clearly out there. Besides the 211 number, you have to actually search for these numbers. I spoke to another number who gave me a couple of other numbers, one of which being a alternate version of the 211 number. I called that number, just sent me to 211 again, in which that person said that they weren't sure what to do. However, if she, didn't have any place to go, she can go to a homeless shelter. So if you're a tourist in one of the richest, most powerful countries in the world and cannot book a hotel for whatever reason to quarantine in, maybe they don't want you to stay there, maybe you just don't have the money to do that, your only other option is to go to a homeless shelter. Now, fortunately, we did find one other number that does provide free quarantine services for people who have nowhere else to go. However, you actually have to apply for that, and if there are no spots open, then you're kind of out of luck in that regard. However, fortunately, there was a space open, and she was able to find a motel that was transformed into a COVID quarantine center with doctors on staff. Do not worry, she is doing fine. I think she was only minorly ill for about a day, slight headache, and she is doing better. However, she is still currently in Los Angeles having to quarantine there for about 2 weeks before she can go back on her flight home. So the fact that there's really not much available, and again, this is as a native English speaker from LA, having to do a lot of calling and finally finding one place where you might be able to apply if they have space open. It's quite jaw-dropping that there's no other services available for people that get COVID and have nowhere else to quarantine, which can kind of go to show why the numbers are so out of control in the US and why I'm so happy to be in Korea. So if I happen to catch COVID, not only will the health insurance cover everything if I am hospitalized, but I'll actually have a place to go. Now, as I said, there are minor things that do upset me about living in Korea. These things obviously they're very, very tiny and they kind of build up over time. Usually the breaking point is at about 1 year not breaking point, but the point where I really needed to get out as of 1 year. However, I couldn't go for 2 years, so I felt really pressured. But it wasn't until this trip. Normally when I go and come back, I'm very happy to be back, but it wasn't until this trip where I was extremely happy to come back and extremely grateful that I have the privilege to be able to stay in this wonderful country. Now, with that being said, I am back. I was actually able to pick up a new computer while I was in the US, which means that I can finally edit videos without the computer about to explode. Rendering will be faster, editing will be a lot easier and seamless. So hopefully that means more videos will be coming out as opposed to my very slow video release that's been going on the past couple of months. So sorry about that. Let me know what you guys think about the video. Go ahead, leave a comment below. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you hated the video, unsubscribe, hit that thumbs down button, I should say. You guys know what to do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.